Michael Douglas is the son of a Hollywood legend who refused to just ride on his famous father's success and instead built his own incredible career. He's the man who showed a whole generation what real ambition looks like. He has that unforgettable silver voice from Wall Street and became a symbol of what it means to keep going no matter what life throws at you. He wasn't born into struggle or poverty like many stars. He was born right into the spotlight with red carpets, fancy gold-decorated mansions, and a father whose fame belonged to the entire world. Having privilege was his starting line, but it definitely wasn't his shelter or protection. Having a famous last name was part of who he was, but it wasn't a safety net that caught him when he fell. From that golden but lonely childhood, he learned one of life's hardest lessons, which is that fame multiplies the pressure on you, but pain builds real strength inside you. And from that strength that came from suffering, he built an empire that no scandal, no terrible illness, and no amount of time could ever erase or destroy. Today his fortune is worth more than $350 million, like a monument carved not from money he inherited but from decades of never stopping and always working hard. His Westchester estate, worth $12 million and made of marble and memories, glows like a beautiful cathedral of success. His Bermuda villa faces the same Atlantic Ocean winds that once carried his childhood loneliness when he was a sad little boy. Now those same winds carry peace to him instead. In Majorca, his oceanfront mansion sits perched high above cliffs of light and stands as both a fortress protecting him and a prayer of gratitude. His Manhattan penthouse overlooks the skyline he conquered through hard work, while a whole fleet of classic cars, including a Bentley, Jaguar, and Porsche, wait like loyal horses of a movie king. Every brick, every polished stone, and every window pane gleams and shines with the story of a man who turned his pain into success and prestige, and turned his family legacy into his own legend. But this story isn't really about wealth and money. It's about what that wealth cost him to earn. Every single dollar in that empire carries a scar from a battle he fought. Every mansion and car is a witness to the nights when he fought pain all alone in silence. Behind all those shiny trophies were mornings when his voice failed him completely. When the mirror showed not a legend, but just a man simply trying to survive and endure another day. The world saw only his success and fame. His family saw his survival and struggle. He was a father who worked even when he was in terrible pain. He was a husband who learned what real love meant through experiencing loss. And now, as time softens the bright glow of fame, what remains isn't the fortune but the grace he carries. If his strength ever helped you stand strong through your own storms in life, you should leave a tribute below for him. Because endurance and never giving up is truly the finest art of living that exists. Before the world knew him as a legend, there was just a boy who lived in the quiet pain between two different worlds, one that was dazzling and exciting, and one that was demanding and harsh, and neither world was capable of giving him real love. He was born not into struggle but into legacy and a famous family name. And legacy, he would learn as he grew up, can be its own kind of prison when all you really want is just a pair of arms that stay with you and hold you. For Michael Douglas, the son of Hollywood giant Kirk Douglas and Bermudian actress Diana Dill, greatness wasn't a dream he had to chase. It was an expectation that was written right into his last name from birth. Yet behind that surname that glittered and sparkled on movie theater signs was a boy staring at empty chairs at the dinner table and quiet phones that never rang, wondering why his father's applause and attention were always reserved for strangers instead of for him. He said later that he was always trying to step out of his father's huge shadow, remembering all those long years he spent chasing the approval of a man who rarely came home to see him. Stepping out of that shadow, he discovered, was never going to be simple or easy. Because his father wasn't just famous in a normal way. He was the standard that everyone measured success by. Kirk Douglas, who was the child of poor Russian Jewish immigrants, had risen from absolutely nothing to become the iron-strong figure of Hollywood after World War II ended. He was relentless, super disciplined, and emotionally impossible to reach or connect with. Michael would admit decades later that his father was more like a concept or an idea than an actual presence in his life. When his parents' marriage fell apart quietly in 1951, Michael was 7 years old, which was old enough to feel the family breaking apart but too young to really understand or name what was happening. The holidays that came after that were measured only in visits from his dad, and those visits were rare, rehearsed like a performance, and very quick, and each one made the distance between them wider instead of bringing them closer together. In interviews many years later, Michael described that sad time as the silence that exists between rounds of applause at a show. His mother Diana remarried a writer named William Dar Rid, who was a man of gentleness rather than fame and grandeur. Michael once thought back and said that his stepfather gave him the love he didn't even know he needed so badly. For the first time in his life, someone actually attended his school plays, asked him about his day, and showed up not to watch a performance but just to be present with him as a person. The contrast between his stepfather and his real father was both a revelation that opened his eyes and also a wound that hurt deeply. It taught him that real affection and love could exist in the world, but maybe not for very long or forever. He was born in September of 1944 while World War II was tearing across continents and destroying countries, and in a way, that chaos in the world mirrored the chaos that existed inside his home and family. Kirk was busy in Hollywood building a massive empire of fame. Diana raised their son between New York City and the stormy, battered shores of Bermuda Island. There were birthdays celebrated with empty seats where his father should have been sitting. There were letters that replaced real hugs and embraces. There were photo frames that grew dusty and covered in dust before they ever grew warm with love and memories. He once said that people think being born into fame and a famous family is a blessing and a gift, but he didn't grow up feeling royal or special at all. He grew up feeling completely alone and forgotten. On his mother's side of the family, he carried a whole lineage of rank and military order. His grandfather was Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Melville Dill, who was once Bermuda's Attorney General and militia commander. His great-grandfather was Thomas Newbold Dill, who served as a judge and the mayor of Hamilton. And before them in the family line was a sea captain who died tragically in the Atlantic Ocean, leaving behind a legacy of duty and endurance that the family had to carry. These were all men who conquered different worlds, one conquering through law, one through the sea, and one through fame and movies. The heavy weight of all their names and accomplishments rested on the shoulders of a boy who was still just searching for his own identity and trying to figure out who he even was. He went to fancy elite schools like Allen Stevenson in New York, Eaglebrook in Massachusetts, and Choate in Connecticut, which were all places specifically designed to shape and mold future leaders of America. But even between those marble halls and beautifully manicured lawns, Michael often felt like an exile living in paradise, like he didn't really belong there. He didn't know which version of himself he was supposed to be, he recalled years later. Was he supposed to be the actor's son, the island's heir, or just the invisible child sitting in the back of the fancy limousine? That question about his identity would follow him into adulthood like a shadow, and in time it would become the spark that fueled his empire and drive. Because what the world mistook for privilege and easy living was actually for him an early lesson in real value, the kind of value that no inheritance or family money could ever teach someone. From his father's absence, he learned hunger for approval. From the distance between them, he learned discipline. And from all that silence, he learned the first language of endurance, which became the foundation on which he would build absolutely everything that came after in his life and career. Before the applause and the shiny trophies came into his life, there was only uncertainty and confusion. There was a young man drifting through the golden light of California, totally unsure which dream, if any of them, truly belonged to him and was really his own. Michael Douglas wasn't born hungry for success like some people are. He became hungry when comfort and easy living began to suffocate him and make him feel trapped. At the University of California in Santa Barbara, sometime during the restless mid-1960s, he wandered between classrooms and questions he didn't yet know how to answer or even ask properly. He signed up to study dramatic arts not because he had conviction or passion, but because of pure exhaustion from not knowing what else to do. He didn't choose acting because he was passionate about it, he said many years later looking back. He chose it simply because he didn't know what else to choose with his life. Acting was the only space and place where his last name didn't immediately define who he was before he even opened his mouth. Yet the heavy weight of that famous name still followed him around like an echo he couldn't escape no matter how hard he tried.